Temporary tattoos are a childhood staple. The 60-second wait was almost too much to bear until you could finally peel off the white backing for the big reveal. But if you thought this experience was forever left in your memories, think again. Scientists have reimagined temporary tattoos into a medical device that's placed on the skin to monitor patients' health.
Most people don't realize that's not that big of a step away from sci-fi. It's a little closer to reality, but we use the same sort of sci-fi mentality to motivate a lot of our vision behind doing certain scientific work. And then, of course, we do what we can to add real data and discovery and advancement towards meeting that ultimate goal that often sounds kind of sci-fi-like.
That's Dr. Aaron Franklin, professor of electrical and computer engineering at Duke University. He also runs the Franklin Group, a research lab focused on creating electronic devices like e-tattoos to progress a medical treatment strategy called theragnostics.
Theragnostics or theranostics is this concept that you're going to have a system that is both diagnosing as well as producing or providing therapeutics to address whatever the current condition is.
Meaning a patient could be diagnosed and immediately treated all through one small device. But finding the right tools to create this technology can be difficult, which is where Franklin's team comes in. His lab develops special materials and sensors that are compatible with human skin. He says the ideal device will stick on the skin like a Band-Aid and improve our body's ability to heal.
The big picture concept is to develop enough diversity of biocompatible materials and devices that can either deliver therapeutics or provide diagnostic information so that you can design all types of custom systems that are integrated onto the skin.
Though e-tattoos are the first concept for skin application, the medical community has also been researching ingestible bioelectronics to track a patient's health.
So if you're not actually printing an electronic type tattoo that would function on the skin of the body, you could instead, for instance, design a full electronic theranostic system in the form of an ingestible pill, where the pill contains all functional electronics needed for collecting data to do diagnostics, such as diagnostics on the digestive tract. And then that data could even be used within the same pill to deliver local types of therapeutics that may have higher effectiveness if they are delivered locally at the point of origin, wherever there is a measurement of a certain condition.
But if we already have ingestible devices, why do we need electronic tattoos? Franklin says it comes down to the tattoo's customizability. He calls it bespoke electronics, meaning they can create a custom fit or design for each patient. Franklin explains how this technology can be much more effective than the current therapeutic process.
Our approach for treatment in terms of applying therapeutic drugs is whole system treatment, right? I mean, you take almost all the drugs once you're out of the hospital, you take them by ingesting them. And even if you're in the hospital, it's often intravenous. So it's still sort of a whole body effect that has a targeted response at the point of injury or the point of concern that needs to be treated. But nothing is perfectly localized. It usually has a whole systemic sort of element to it.
Which is why Franklin says e-tattoos can be so beneficial.
If you were able to develop an electronic tattoo system that had biomedical operation with diagnostic and therapeutic effects, you could actually give a more localized delivery of treatment. So at that point of injury or recovery, you can imagine, at the bedside in the hospital before leaving home, you have a customized tattoo that is temporary, but gets applied to near the point of injury, and that has electronic communication, maybe through an app on your cell phone that is correspondingly interfaced with your doctor's office, and that allows for adjustments to dose for delivery of medication that may be held in the tattoo patch, and a monitoring of vitals that are local to the point of injury without requiring you to physically go to the hospital.
Franklin says doctors will be able to customize the device to a patient's specific body part and medical condition they're aiming to treat. And though his team is working to make electronic tattoos a reality, the idea for this research didn't start in the lab. It actually began in the classroom.
One of my students was just developing a printable ink of a conductive material that was made out of what are called silver nanowires. And we had been printing it on all kinds of different substrates, paper, plastic substrates.
His student had even printed the material on an apple, but that was just the beginning.
One day he decided, you know what, I've printed on everything else. I've studied all the biocompatibility. I'm just going to print it on my finger. And honestly, if he had asked me, I would have been obligated to tell him not to do it because I would have to evaluate all of the safety protocols and things. But being a very visionary and excited student that he did it anyway and just came to me and told me that he had done it. And it was safe, thankfully. I mean, he had done his homework to make sure. But what resulted was him showing that he had these small metal printed traces on his finger that were lighting up an LED bulb. And the first evidence of printing these ultra thin layers and having them remain conductive in that condition.
Up until this point, Franklin mostly developed technology for computer chips. However, this student's work prompted Franklin to reimagine his lab's research focus and reach out to his biomedical engineering colleagues.
We got to talking about what we were capable of doing in my lab and what they wanted to achieve in theirs. And it became just the perfect collaborative marriage of sorts where we realized, gosh, you really like to do therapeutic things on the skin. And my lab really likes to do material development and biomedical device design. This could be a really great solution that bridges our two interests and capabilities. And that's what got us into working towards this particular path of theranostic electronic tattoos, is bridging our two interests and advantages there.
And though theragnostics is a broad category, some researchers have homed in on creating e-tattoos for specialized applications. Dr. Ruzbeh Jafari wants to use this technology to track blood pressure. He's a professor of biomedical engineering at Texas A&M University. His recent paper, published in Nature, successfully shows how e-tattoos will be able to monitor blood pressure more consistently than the traditional cuff.
Cuff-based blood pressures have been around since 1881. That's when they were invented in Austria. And the basic technology really hasn't changed much. The blood pressure is a really important biomarker because it can provide important insight into cardiovascular health. It would not only provide information about how heart itself is behaving, but also the entire cardiovascular system, the arteries that would move blood from one location to another location are responding.
And though cuffs give accurate readings, Jafari says they may not always be a true representation of your daily blood pressure. Some people have masked hypertension, meaning they usually have high blood pressure, but when in a hospital it becomes normal for that short period of time. And Jafari says other patients can have the opposite issue.
There is another term called white coat syndrome, which is you see a physician, you see a nurse, you see a doctor, and then they're taking your blood pressure and you get stressed out, you get anxious, and your blood pressure goes up. But in reality, your blood pressure should not be up.
Jafari hopes these e-tattoos will offer doctors continuous insight into a patient's blood pressure throughout the day, not just one moment at a time. In order for Jafari's idea to become a reality, the device has to be durable enough to withstand a patient's everyday life.
That's the part that we're trying to improve the lifetime of this. It can stay for a week, but the advantage or what they offer is they build a good intimate contact with the skin, but really the most important aspect of it is they always stay at the same location. They don't move around,
which has proven to be a problem for other cuffless monitors. If the sensor shifts on the skin, it picks up new levels from that different location. Jafari says once that move occurs, it's extremely challenging to connect the various measurements into one reading. And in order for people to actually wear electronic tattoos, Jafari says they need to be as small as possible. His current model is about the size of a dime, and he's hoping to go even smaller. But while that's good for wearability, it poses some internal challenges. The team has to figure out how to shrink the electronics inside the device while maintaining structural integrity. Fortunately, that's an area in which Franklin's lab can help.
So we work on materials, designing materials that can have those type of properties, mostly with nanomaterials, a certain class of very small materials that are electrically conductive and favorable for situations like this. And then secondly, the design of the devices to ensure that they deliver consistently the type of readings that you would need to trust the data enough to have it drive therapeutic decision-making.
Franklin says the ultimate goal is for electronic tattoos to both monitor vitals and deliver medication almost instantaneously. And though there's been great progress, he warns the final product may take some more time.
I won't pretend that this is happening tomorrow. There's a lot of really important scientific discovery and development work and testing that is going to need to happen in the years ahead in order to arrive at that kind of a point.
And researchers like Jafari are helping close that gap between idea and reality. Since the success of his most recent study, Jafari's next steps are testing the device on different types of patients and improving its durability. Who knows, in a few years you might be leaving the doctor's office with an electronic temporary tattoo of your own. You can find more information about Drs. Aaron Franklin and Rouzbeh Jafari on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. I'm Reed Pence. Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
There are more fish consumption advisories for mercury than all other contaminants combined.
Do you know how dangerous mercury really is?
Then how scientists are utilizing the placebo effect.
Maybe we should look at placebo not as a problem, but as a resource. Because in a lot of clinical trials, placebo is the scary monster.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal.
I'm Nancy Benson, host of Radio Health Journal. If you enjoy listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
The refugee resettlement program in this country expects refugees to achieve self-sufficiency within 90 days.
The immense challenges of building a new life in an unfamiliar place. Then,
the scale of sugar production, the scale of these land estates that we call plantations was vastly ramped up, and that enslavement became, for the first time in European history, entirely racialized.
The untold narrative of early European exploitation. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Viewpoints on your favorite radio station and subscribe and listen to shows anytime on Apple Podcasts and Google Play.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.